بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum everyone, and peace be upon you. Grateful for the opportunity to be back with you and to have another opportunity to speak with you, alhamdulillah. You know, for those who are joining us just this afternoon, in the morning we discussed a topic that's a great segue into this topic. So whatever this topic that I'm going to be talking to you about will expand on, the topic we discussed this morning, which is about the importance of connecting to truth. We were talking about Muslim identity and how important it is for us to, strengthen our Muslim identity, not by going outward, but by going inward and asking ourselves deeper questions about our connection to truth, about our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's truths, and whether we are in line with those truths. And instead of going outward and saying, what image am I presenting to the world, we have to ask ourselves, what image, how am I presenting myself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to myself, and am I consistent with that, when it comes to my actions. So this topic for this session is about good and evil and the balance between and viewing them, with balance. And the reason why it's such a great follow-up topic to what I discussed earlier about connecting to truth is that, this topic has everything to do with us connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's truth so that we can have balance in approaching, the issue of good and evil. And in my line of work, I cannot begin to tell you how much, people are struggling because of a lack of balance when it comes to approaching good and evil. Now, these struggles are manifesting themselves in different ways, and they're working on both two ends, which I want to share with you. People are struggling to understand good and evil in the sense of how they view what's happening in the world. Meaning, things that happen that are good, that we perceive as good, and then things that happen that are unfathomable. That immediately we say, oh my gosh, this is horrific, this is horrible, how could this happen to somebody like this? How could, on social media, you go on your news feed, within a minute, you are already absorbing how many incidents of trauma, abuse, horrific things happening in the world, our brothers and sisters suffering overseas in various countries in the Muslim world. And so you start having these questions of, well, how come there's so much evil? And these questions are causing struggles for so many people. And on the other end, the concept of good and evil in terms of, being impressed with what we see that is not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the verse for this session that I want to remind myself and you of is the one where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, not equal are the evil and the good, although the abundance of evil might impress you. So on another end, it is the things that are displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are attracting so many hearts, are luring so many people in. And so we have this conflict within us. Well, then how come, what is displeasing to Allah is so prevalent? And how come it's so easy to do what is displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And this is what's happening, is that the things that are displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are becoming, accepted by so many people. And so we're trying to navigate all these issues where we view the world and we see, we see good and we see good deeds. Of course, there's always going to be a presence of good. But then when we see evil, we don't know how to make sense of it. We ask questions like, I'm sitting here making dua for something, right? And I'm trying to, you might have a dua that you've been asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, and then you see somebody else engaging in, say, haram and get the thing that you've been asking for so easily. You might see, people that you respect and you admire and you think, they're religious and they're practicing, and then you see, a wave of people compromising their values and accepting things that in your heart you were taught are displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the times we are living in, where the falsehood is so popular and the truth is not that popular. And this is creating a conflict in so many people. And slowly people are distancing themselves because they cannot make sense of it. And so for me, my passion in my work is really about analyzing these spiritual struggles through a psychological lens. I like to look at what is happening within a person mentally, emotionally, when they are approaching and navigating the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the things one of the most powerful, realizations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed me to come to is that the reason we are struggling so much is because we do not know the tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put within us and how to navigate those tools. So we are walking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without understanding His design. And so when we see things in the world, we don't know how to use these tools that He put within us to navigate those struggles, to make sense of them. And one of the biggest, I don't have that much time to share, in depth the realization, but I want to share something, just one thing that is very, very important, which is we struggle when we lead with our minds. So through my work, I noticed that the more that people made this mind, this rational mind, this mind that absorbs information through the senses, processes that information, makes sense of that information, the more that we put this mind on a pedestal, this rational brain, to make sense of the world, the more we struggle. Because this is not the only tool that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to make sense of the world. But we live in a world where we prioritize what is measurable, what is scientific, what we can see with our physical eye, but we do not prioritize the sight of the heart, which we know is a reality in our faith. And so in the West, there's this emphasis on the mind, and I'm sure many of you have seen cartoon skits where you see the heart is depicted as being all bruised up and with bandages, and then you see the brain as being superior and telling the heart, well, I told you so. There's this emphasis that if you prioritize your heart, you lead with your heart, you're going to be following just emotions. But that is actually an inaccurate assumption. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the power of the heart and the intelligence of the heart. That actually in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about understanding, He mentions the heart. He associates the power of understanding with the heart. And so there's a verse I would like to share with you where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then have they not traveled in the earth so that they have hearts to understand with, or ears to hear with? Surely, then it's not the eyes that are blind, but it's the hearts within the breast that are blind. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is associating understanding with what? The heart. What does this tell us? It tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a tool within me so powerful that it can help me understand the world that I am going through, this human experience that I am passing through. And that the rational brain, it collects information, it processes it, and it interprets it, and it comes back to you. It's not going to always come back to you with, an easy answer, an easy fix. Yeah, there are going to be situations where you look at and you say, wow, okay, I can make sense of that. I can logically understand that. But how many situations do we witness in our world that we cannot make sense of? The question that always comes up, why do bad things happen to good people? Why are all these atrocities happening? Why is it so easy? Why is it so easy for, somebody to do evil, but then when I want to do what is pleasing to Allah, it's so hard? And then we look at it just through a rational lens and we say, well, it doesn't make sense. So if your mind is king, then you halt there. You don't walk towards God. You halt because now you can't understand. And you depended on this mind to make sense of the world, and now that it came back to you with nothing, you feel like you cannot walk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anymore. And this is the struggle that I see oftentimes, which led to me developing the heart over mind and ego approach, where it kind of teaches us about our psycho-spiritual system that we do not understand. We have a tool within us that we have to prioritize, and this is the heart. This is the part of us that we have to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sound, whole. And when we can live in a way where we prioritize this most powerful part of us, then when we approach the things that we cannot understand with our rational brain, When we prioritize this heart and we link it to its source and the creator of it and the one who nourishes it, then when we approach situations where the rational brain comes back to us with no solution, where the rational brain cannot make sense of the evil we witness in the world, then this heart can help us understand and derive meaning from our experiences. The heart is what is capable of doing that. The mind can serve the heart. It can collect information from the world that benefit the heart. But the heart is what derives true, spiritual, sacred meanings from the world. It is what sees what the eye cannot see. And so that tells us what? I have to prioritize the nourishment of this most important part within me. So that when I witness something that I cannot make sense of on a rational level, I look for the meaning that cannot be measurable, that cannot be 1 + 1 = 2. That cannot be something that I have to see with my physical eye. So what are these meanings? Meanings are, actually in existential before I get to the meanings, in existential psychology, I mentioned this early, it's a branch of psychology that approaches struggle through, an existential lens, meaning looking at the purpose and purpose of a person's life and how a person derives meaning from their existence. And they say that they approach struggles in the sense that they make sense of struggles as a person, suffering. A person suffers when they are not able to derive meaning from their experiences. That they say that suffering happens, pain is inevitable, right? All of us will experience pain. But suffering, they say, happens when you cannot derive meaning from your experiences. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do for us except give us meaning for our experiences? Through the Quran, through all the teachings in the Quran, and through the way and the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We are always learning how to do what? To derive meaning. You go through something, you think it's bad, you're taught to understand that what? The thing that might look bad might be good for you. That for the believer, all the affairs are good. That you go through something difficult, there's meaning for you, not only in this world, but in the akhirah. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifted the veils for you and He showed you what He was doing for you, you would be in awe and full of gratitude. And so these are meanings that we have to look for. When our rational brain views the world and comes back to us with no answers, then we have to build the muscle of prioritizing our heart. Because here's the thing, we cannot wait until we go through struggle and then say, okay, heart, help me derive meaning. This heart, if it wasn't a priority before you went through the struggle, you can't snap it, into action. So prioritizing the heart is a muscle we have to build, a daily muscle we have to build, where we are connecting this heart to the one who can provide its nourishment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Connecting this heart to what it needs to thrive, to what it needs for the barriers around it to fall off. Just as when we, commit a sin, there's a dot, a black dot that goes on our heart and another black dot that goes on our heart until there are layers and layers and layers. Good deeds, connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nourishing your heart the way that it was designed to nourish, it lifts those barriers that our deeds, our sins, accumulated upon it. So, but the heart is powerful. Don't ever forget that. And so when that tells us, though, that for me to access its power, I have to make sure there's no barriers around it. I have to be actively working daily to make sure that I am not piling on these barriers that keep me from activating its power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave. Because would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us on this earth without giving us a navigation system back to Him? Absolutely not. If human beings can think of the idea of a navigation system, if a mother can think about not wanting to leave her child alone just for a second, do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is more merciful to us than a mother is to her child, would ever put us on this earth without something, without a longing, without a pull in our heart for Him? There's a pull, there's a longing. This heart was made to seek Him and to connect to Him. But if we do not pay attention to what we're doing, if we do not pay attention to how we're nourishing it, if we do not pay attention to how we're taking care of these tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put within us, then these barriers continue to pile and pile and pile, making our basira, our ability to see, spiritually see the sacred truths that exist, it makes it, our actions make it more difficult. So there's no easy fix. To be able to have that sakina, to be able to derive meaning, to be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the good and the bad, to be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through every struggle, to be able to walk towards God in all of our conditions, it requires that you prioritize this heart, you treat it as the lead of this inner world, and you treat the mind as the servant. Meaning what? Meaning that this mind is there to serve this most noble part of me. So what does that mean? It means I take care of how this mind collects information. How does the mind collect information? Through our 5 senses. Through what we see, through what we hear, through what we touch. Our senses are the portals in which we collect information from our world. And you are collecting information whether you are aware of it or not. There's no button you turn off on your mind, right? Your mind is a powerful tool. It's a miracle in itself. If you just, look up, neuropsychology or neurology, or read about just some of the read about neurons, read about how your brain just fires, that has these these neurons that every time you receive something new, they're firing. They're firing because you're receiving information, you're collecting information. Look it up, see that. It's like you're looking at electricity in your brain. It's so powerful. It's such a miracle. But this brain is constantly working, whether we realize it or not. But what are we in control over? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the will, to control? What we look at, what we hear, where our feet walk to, right? Who we surround ourselves with. So you can't just be prioritizing the nourishment of your heart and then not taking care of your mind. And so in the world that we live in, especially with social media, we have to be careful what we absorb, because within a minute on your news feed, you could be collecting so much information, cluttering your brain, and then how did that information serve this most noble part within you, this most powerful part within you, the part within you that sees truths that this physical eye cannot see? So we always have to be asking ourselves, how is what I'm absorbing serving my heart? So that I can see what I need to see, so that Allah can, lift the veils between me and truth. Which leaves me with a few reminders. We have to always be asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to see truth as truth and falsehood as falsehood. So that when we look at good, we don't assume that just because something appears good that it means that it's true or that it's pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just because we see something that appears evil, that we don't automatically think, oh my gosh, this is horrible. This is, something that is displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to constantly ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to see His truth as truth and falsehood as falsehood. We have to constantly be asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to align us, to align these tools that He gave us, He put within us with Him, to align all these tools with Him. One of the du'as I really like to make is, Ya Allah, align me spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, on all levels with what is pleasing to You. Because you see, this mind is always absorbing, it's always thinking. We have thoughts, right? A cognition, the process of absorbing information, interpreting that information. Don't we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide that? So shouldn't we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, align my thoughts with what is pleasing to You, so that my thoughts are pleasing to You, so that my thoughts serve my path towards You. We have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in taking care of these powerful tools that He put within us. But it starts with turning inward. If we do not take the time to know ourselves, know how He designed us, know all of these amazing navigation tools He put within us, then we won't be able to really seek Him in the best of ways. We won't be able to navigate this human experience in the best of ways. And we won't be able to return back to Him with a heart that is sound, a heart that is whole. And so, one, continue to always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, to align you, to make you see what you need to see, to hear what you need to hear, to allow you for Him to allow you to Do what is pleasing to Him and make it easy for you to do what is pleasing to Him, and make it difficult for you to do what is, displeasing to Him. Because in the ayah it says that, evil is although the abundance of evil is pleasing to you, right? Or is impressive to you. So sometimes we look at the world and we think, wow, like people, sometimes I hear, well, look at non-Muslims, they're doing everything they want and they seem happy, Shaitan will always package what is false as pretty and what is true as ugly. And he will do it in the most cunning ways. It's not going to be obvious. It's not going to be like, this is bad. He's going to package what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as difficult. And there's a hadith where the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he tells us about this, how, paradise is surrounded by adversity, right? And hellfire is surrounded by our desires, our shahawat, our lusts. So, we have to recognize that yes, the path to Jannah, it requires work. It requires that we roll up our sleeves and we're willing to understand that it might take us doing something that we do not like, but we know is good for us. But don't we do that with everything else in this dunya? We know that to get a certain degree, I have to do hard work to get where I need to be. We know that, we might want things in this world, but we know that it requires us to do things that we might not like. So we understand this rationally. It's a logical conclusion, right? But then with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have contradictions. We think, no, it should be easy. I will end with this, a reminder that my teacher, told me the other day when I called him to ask him for advice about a matter. I was going through something and I wanted to ask him for, advice about what I should do. And he gave me the advice and I said, that's really hard for me to do. And he said, well, Marwa, Jannah is not easy to get into. And he actually is the one who told me about this hadith that I just shared with you. He said, but it's worth it. And so we have to keep reminding ourselves that the akhirah is a priority. And this session was perfectly timed after Sheikh Sulaiman's lecture, because as he beautifully reminded us of the importance of connecting to akhirah. But we have to prioritize it daily so that we are able to put this world in its place and view it in a way that is balanced, inshallah, and view good and evil as, within a balanced way. But we have to prioritize that world. And we have to recognize that it does take work. But you know what the beautiful thing is? Whenever you're going to do something that can earn you a high reward in Jannah, it might be hard for the nafs, because the nafs wants instant gratification. It wants to feel good right away. It's hard for you to do something that is serving your heart and your path to Allah and gives no share to the nafs. It's so heavy in the beginning. But you know what I find is a consistent truth? Is if you take that step where you do something for the sake of Allah, for the sake of earning a reward with Him, even though it's so heavy on your heart, and you don't give a share to your nafs, you prove your sincerity for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that moment, and Allah will never let you walk away without His strength, without His help, and you will feel it. Because in that moment, when you said, it is hard for me, it is heavy on my heart, it is not easy, my nafs is getting nothing from this, then, and you do it anyway, you pass the test of showing your sincerity for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never let you walk away empty-handed. You will find His help because He is ash-shakur. He is the most appreciative. He's the one that you come to Him with a hand's length, He comes to you with an arm's length. You go to Him walking, He comes to you running. He will always come closer to you than you go to Him. So remember that the initial step, pain is inevitable. And by the way, the path of not walking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is painful, and the path of walking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is painful. But it's different kinds of pain. One, you take the initial pain and you do what is difficult for your nafs, but it's followed with such beauty, relief, healing, joy, liberation, freedom. We talked about the power of liberation, inner freedom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you so much after you go through that struggle. The other is also painful, but it's you might not follow Allah's path, and you might feel that, instant gratification. The nafs gets a temporary relief, but guess what? It's followed by prolonged, long-term suffering. Not just pain, suffering. Remember, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us see truth as truth and help us stay firm on His path. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala align us spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and on all levels with what is pleasing to Him and with what will guarantee us a place in Jannah, inshallah. Thank you. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.